Hello, welcome to the April 26, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm going to do a quick audio test, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Hello, welcome to the April 20. All right, sounds like it's coming through fine on my monitoring computer. So my name is, as I mentioned before, Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America. And I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'll be the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions live in the chat field, or you could send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So just see some different comments kind of coming in. So we will, we usually go for about 4 hours today. And as you ask questions, if you could indicate which version of Cubase, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and which level. So if it's Cubase 12, 11, 10, 10.5, etc., and which operating system you're on, that information is helpful. So if we could try to include that information, I will probably lose the ability to answer questions in real time. I will do my best to kind of catch up throughout the live stream, but if you don't get an immediate response to your question, we will try to get to it in order of the questions asked. So if we could try to refrain from perhaps asking the same question over and over again, that would be appreciated. And we should have all of the topics covered that are discussed in today's live stream, kind of indexed with timestamps, and that should be pinned to the top of the comments field after the live stream when you go to watch it on the Steinberg YouTube channel and the Cubase YouTube channel. So you could quickly navigate. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go directly to cubaseindex.com, and we want to give a special thanks to Jan for creating that website. So I think it's probably almost 18,000 questions or something that are probably indexed that we've answered for people. So we're going to give a special thanks to Jan for that. We have two people that serve as moderators. We have Jazz Dude and Agent K. So Agent K just sent a message in the chat that he's not able to watch live today. So we'll have Jazz Dude will be doing moderation. And we also wanted to give a special, and the moderators aren't Steinberg employees. They're just members of the community, just trying to make it a better place, and often they could give out information in a more real-time manner if needed. And we also wanted to give Jazz Dude a special thanks for his work on the Cubase Nation Discord site. So it's a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg customers. Friday's live stream will be the last live stream of the month, and in tradition, what we will do is do a 2-hour live stream, and then that will be followed by a 2-hour Zoom meetup. And these are always so incredibly fun and fascinating, and just great conversations and great discussions from people that are live stream attendees throughout the whole world. And I think it's a great way to kind of meet people. We have had a lot of collaborative projects as a result of this. So we will have the Zoom meetup details. We'll post that in the next live stream. Or if you wanted to, I'll create the Zoom link today. But if you wanted to have the actual invitation, so we'll be starting at about 2 hours after this time on Friday, which will be 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. And we should go for about 2 or 3 hours. But it's a wonderful discussion. I always look forward to it every month. So we hope to see some new faces directly with on the Zoom meetup. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So we see All right, from Shane Hay, just says he loves these streams are so helpful. And also, I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. I think it's always fascinating seeing people from all over the world being a part of the community. All right. So we see Shane Hay just says, loving these streams, so helpful, all thanks to Greg's time and what other DAWs offer this kind of knowledge base? Absolutely none. So yeah, I don't follow the other ones, but I think this is a great community to learn a lot of stuff and get your questions answered. So thanks for the kind words, Shane. Okay, we have a question. There are a few third-party companies who seem to sell the upgrade to Cubase Pro 12 at a fraction of the price from the Steinberg. What is your advice on that? Thank you. I think that the only third-party source that sells upgrades and updates is going to be Sweetwater in the United States, and that's only for United States customers. So I would say if it looks like it's a really attractive deal that it may not be legitimate. I just saw two different in my Facebook feed. I saw kind of within 3 or 4 posts of each other. A store that is seemingly going out of business, and you could buy a 59, gold top Les Paul reissue for $124. And you kind of, when I clicked on the link just to get a laugh, it seemed like, they had kind of imagery of Guitar Center, which is a large music instrument retail chain in the US, but it had like a phone number that was from Utah, and it was shipping from China. So it's probably maybe not, if it's too good to be true, probably is. My neighbor, I was talking to him at the bus stop a couple months ago, and where our kids are picked up, and it seems like, he was telling me that he was getting a 1972 Telecaster for $149. And needless to say, didn't work out. So if it's too good to be true, it probably is. But I think that Sweetwater is the only third-party seller in America that is authorized to actually sell updates. So I don't think anyone else, but I don't know all the details of the distribution and dealer channels, but I think that's how it is set up. Okay, so we see what is the best way to transfer a song from Cubase 11 to Cubase 12? When I try, Cubase 11 shows up in Cubase 12. So if you are doing something, and sometimes this could be a little, if you're actually just double clicking on the project, like let's say we have a CPR file, you might want to right click and in your operating system, just choose to open with, and then choose the particular program that you want. So if you double click here on a file, it may have the .cpr extension at the operating system level set to open. In Cubase 11 as opposed to Cubase 12, you could always open Cubase 12. And, once you have Cubase 12 open, then just simply choose to open the project from there, and then you could do that. But it's probably just maybe a setting in your operating system where if you're double clicking on the project file itself, that it may be defaulting to an earlier version of Cubase. All right, so we see Jan from Stockholm on. And we see Best Korean Jesus. We have Benny from Sweden. We have Murray Webster checking in from Hanover, Germany. I got to go to Hanover once. All right, and we have Jason Sykes checking in from South Shields, England. All right. So we just see a question. Greg, how to copy CC data from one track to another? So let's say if we are here, let me just go ahead and duplicate this track. So we have two MIDI tracks here. All right. And let's say on my electric piano part, let me just get rid of my modulation data here. Okay, so I'll just start with, we'll just say expression. So and come over here. So let's say if I have expression data. So I think that, let's say we have this expression data. So if I wanted to now come over here, I could just, we'll just do copy, just Control or Command plus C. And let's go to this particular track and come here to expression. And I'm just going to do Alt V, and that will actually allow you to, if you do Alt V, that will paste at origin. So that's how you could just copy different MIDI CCs from different tracks to other tracks. So you could paste it, I think if you do just a normal paste, that you could paste at the cursor position, but if you do Alt or Option plus V, plus the letter V, like Victor, at that point it will go into its actual time position. So give it that a try. And there were some changes in behavior from that was introduced in version 11 to make sure that it would replace the existing CC data underneath instead of merging it. So let me know if that works from you. Okay, reading through comments here. So we have a question, how to manage VST plugins, effects by genre. So you could kind of categorize. So if we go to your studio menu and let's go to your VST plugin manager. And if we come here, we could sort by category. So we just see this little drop down menu here, or we could sort by vendor. So we could just come over here and just choose to sort by category, which I believe is the default setting. And then you could have kind of different, I think you could have it be independent for instruments and effects. And if you wanted to kind of further tweak that, you could just come over here and create a new collection. So you could copy the current collection and then kind of, basically create your own folder organization for VST plugins. But try when you go to the studio menu to VST plugin manager that you click on this little drop down menu, and then you could see sort by category. So if you need further refinement, that's when you could check out working with creating your own plugin collection. Okay, just seeing a question that just said I should specify as a key command. It's from Jason. Okay, so copying the CC data. Okay. So again, it's just going to be just the Control C to copy and then Alt V to kind of paste it back in the same spot. And if you want it to, let's say if I have both of these tracks active in the same time. So let's say I'll just call this, I'll switch this Rhodes. So if you wanted to even, if we have both of these selected, all right, I'll just rename the event. Okay, so if we are editing both of these events here, I could say, okay, I wanted to go to my E piano, my electric piano here, and let's just do another CC. So let's say, okay, we'll just do volume. So as we draw in our volume changes, we could just come right here, copy, and then you could actually just go to the next event here and then hit Alt V, and then you could just, and you could actually switch, go to the next one. So if you wanted to do that with a macro, you could create that to do to copy the CC data and paste it. So that's how you could do it with a keyboard shortcut as well if you wanted to. But just try the if you don't want it tied to the position of the cursor or the playhead position, just do Alt plus V to paste at time. All right, we have Samson Strike checking in from Austria. We have Uno Memento checking in from Finland. Okay, so we have a question, how to set the delay with the project tempo for my guitar solos. So, usually if we have a particular delay plugin, so, and I'll show you with the, like the built-in Steinberg plugins, most, if you want it to have the delay to be musically timed with the event, is, let's say if we want to add a delay, and we could do this with just about any of the delay plugins that come with Cubase. So say, okay, I just want to do a mono delay. You'll often see, usually by default, it will just be set up to see a rhythmic value. So you could have, if you click, like for instance here, you may see like a sync button in most delay plugins. So if you actually just click directly there, we could now just say, okay, I wanted this to be a half note, quarter note, 16th note, and you'll choose different rhythmic values. And as your tempo changes, if your tempo changes from like a tempo map, your delay time will speed up and slow down and stay synced at that particular rhythmic value. Or if you wanted to set to a particular millisecond or second value, you can just click right there to switch between setting the delay time in actual time or setting it based on a musical rhythmic value. So just click right there in your delay plugins. All right. All right, so we see Samson Strike is counting down to Nuendo 12 in Austria. So yeah, I think tomorrow is the big day. All right, and we have Crom official from checking in from Aachen, Germany. Thanks for joining us. And Ironi 81 full from Italy joining us. Thanks for being a part of the community today. All right, so we have a question. Hi, when I load the symphonic orchestra, the instruments still need time to buffer and load, but I can't see it unless I edit some of the instruments. Is there an indicator or other way of knowing it? All right, so let's say if I wanted to go to like an orchestral instrument. So if you're loading it into the particular instrument, so let's say if we come over to our Halion Sonic SE here, and let's say we go to, so while we're doing this, we may just come over here. So we can see that as we load up various instruments, we could see the progress of the instrument being opened. So you could see it within the instrument as the instrument is loading up the samples. Often if you're loading a project with orchestral samples, let's say if we open up this project from scratch, so we'll open and we'll activate it, that as you see the project, loading the different samples, loading up the instruments, loading up the mixer, we could just kind of see this loading up, and now we hit OK, and now we could just play directly. So, but each instrument can load up, samples and their content separately, so it's not something that Cubase does. Cubase will send the information to the plugin, and then how the plugin and how third-party plugins will deal with it could be different. So okay, so we have a question, how to do a backup project and what is its use? So if we had a project with a number of different audio files, samples, and maybe we've recorded, lots of, takes that weren't good. Like let's say you did, 1,400 different vocal recordings and you're only using 7 of them for a particular project, and you wanted to kind of get those cleaned up, or you have audio files that are kind of scattered in different folders and you wanted to kind of consolidate all of the information, we could come over here and just go to your file menu and then choose backup project. And what this is going to allow you to do is to basically choose a new folder. And this folder is where all the audio files used in the project, like it'll ask you to name a new audio file. So we're going to open this folder so we can give it a project name, and we get different options. So we can keep the current project active. We can minimize audio files. So if we aren't using 1,393 takes and we don't want to back those up and we want to clean that up, we could choose to minimize audio files. If we've done offline processing, we can make that permanent. We could remove unused files. We could choose not to back up the video or not to back up the mixdown folder. And what this will do is within that particular folder, it's going to take everything that's needed to play back the particular project. But you have different options. And that's kind of, if you were sloppy, like a lot of times and even from very prominent record producers, I'll get I did a whole album and all the audio files are in one folder, instead of having the audio files on a project by project or a song by song basis. And then they need to clean it up and back it up. So that's when is a good time to use the backup project. All right, so we have a question, how to achieve harmonies with just the singer's voice. So if you know kind of what the chord track is, you could come over here and let me just find this. So, if you have a chord track, you could have Cubase kind of automatically generate the chords based upon the actual musical parts. And you could have a chord track generated from either an audio file or directly from a MIDI event. So if we wanted to come here, we could just say, let's go to my chord track, and I'm going to choose to create chord symbols like from a piano part here. So I could take like a guitar part, a guitar recording, or an entire mix and have it, and use this same process of going to the chord track and say, create chord events. So now we'll just come over here. It's now created a chord track for us. And so if we wanted to play, so I could take just a section. I'm going to take just a little portion of the file with my range selection tool. So you say, okay, I want to do a harmony right there. So we'll go to our audio and choose generate harmony voices. So let's say, okay, I just want it one harmony voice. And then that will automatically be created for us. So as we just come right over here, and we could have this be, you know, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So let's just make that a little louder. So it's, and that's really all you have to do. So generate the chord track so that the harmonies, you know, generating harmonies if they're out of key of the song or out of the chord doesn't do a lot of good. But we could now, and then once we have the chord track, we could select a section, and then at that point, go to your audio menu to generate harmony voices, and you could generate musical harmonies just like that. All right, so we have Pablo Gordy checking in from Chicago. So great to see you. I used to go to Chicago quite a bit. And we see John Costigan checking in from a cold and gray Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks for being a part of the community today. All right, so we have a question. Greg, do the Cubase projects elements work in Cubase Pro 12? So yeah, you could take your Cubase Elements project and load it into Cubase Pro 12 or Nuendo without any problems. If there are, you know, if you've added a bunch of features that are in Cubase Pro 12 and try to go back to Cubase Elements, you may run into some issues. But depending on what the project is using, you could go back, but you can definitely take your Cubase Elements projects and load them into version 12. All right, wonderful to see Stefan from Sweden. Thanks for joining us again. And we have Mimidov in Germany, soon back to Brussels. So thanks for joining us. All right, we have Randy Lee from Texas. Great to see you. So we see evening question for Greg. As an older user starting to notice some high-end roll-off in my left ear, is there a stock plugin I can use in Control Room to flip the stereo? So let's take a look. So we'll come over here and let's just go to our plugins. All right, so let's see. That will allow us to do. So I know a lot of times if you want to flip, one way of doing it is it's not in the control room, and maybe you could indicate if it needs to be in the control room. But if you come to like the master fader here, and if we go over here to combined panner, that you could just move that up into where you see the panning turn orange. So you could flip the left and right channels there. So that's one way of doing it. You might be able to do it with, let's see if maybe like one of the surround panners. Let's see if the imager, I don't know if that will allow you to kind of flip the left and right channels. You could also just, you know, in the control room setup, you could set up a different audio, so if you come over here, I could say, let's say if I want to go to my JBL, let's see if we could just swap these. All right, and I may have to just set it up. Let's see if this preference will. So let's come over here to preferences. So it's not a plugin basis, but I think if you come here and let's say you go to the preferences to control room, you can say exclusive device ports for monitor channels. Let's uncheck that. So I could say, so when I switch monitors, I could just switch between. So let's say if I just pan my vocal. So you could have like your like a secondary monitor, just have the panning inverted. So that would be one way of doing it as well, but not necessarily through a plugin. All right, so we see any way to pull a vocal out from a pre-recorded track. So yeah, what you could do is, and if I usually have a good example, but then YouTube will ding me on it. But if you just come to, when you have Cubase, you'll get Spectral Layers Pro, or I'm sorry, you don't get Spectral, but Spectral Layers 1. Sorry, I misspoke. But with Cubase comes Spectral Layers 1, and then you could just add that as an ARA extension. So if I wanted to take a particular file here, we could add the ARA extension. And one of the things that you could do now that we have it as an ARA extension, if you come over here to layer, you could choose to unmix stems, and you could unmix the vocals directly from there. And it works surprisingly well. So check that out. So that's just a part of your Cubase Pro license. You have access to download in Spectral Layers 1, and that will allow you to just simply to remove vocals from a mixed track. All right, so we see why do isotope plugins make 12 crash when you load an 11 project in there? So, you know, it seems like it's, as Jazz Dude mentioned, it's not a Cubase problem. So there's a lot of little anomalies that people run into with isotope plugins, and I guess I could leave it there. But it seems like those, you know, some plugins can be problematic and can cause crashes. So, all right, and we see Brian Sawyer checking in from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. And we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. And we have Alex from Scotland. Asked a couple questions. All right, reading through different questions. All right, so we see Michael Teams is already granting with fire and speed lots of different ice cream for people, so everyone will get their virtual ice cream. Seems like. Thank you, Michael. All right, we have Rick France checking in from Oregon. Good to have you on the live stream. All right, so we have a question. How about a little tip for using Lin 1? So Lin 1 is a dither plugin. So if you're going to be, let's say if you're working at like a 24-bit 96K and you want to have kind of the same quality of that the higher resolution affords you when delivering to lower resolution, such as maybe an MP3 file or employing a 16-bit 44.1 for CD use. So what a lot of people would do at that point is include a dithering plugin. So we could just come right over here and just put this probably on your master fader, probably post fader. So, and then at this point, we could just see that it would be under mastering. So if we were taking, basically we could say if I was doing something for a 16-bit CD, at this point, it would do the dithering for us to make sure that we have as high quality as possible going from a higher resolution to a lower resolution or changing different sample rates. So that's when you could use the Lin 1 dither. All right, you see Kerwin Young is very excited for the Nuendo 12 release. All right. All right, so we see from John Costigan, hello, Greg, with Cubase Windows 10, Cubase 11.041, put a strat into the high Z input of an Apollo, gain levels, okay. I noticed that the levels in Cubase were low. I raised the pre-level, record stats were at minus 40, brain freeze. Make sure, so one is, it sounds like you have the high Z, often interfaces will have a high Z switch. As you're recording, so make sure that that switch is engaged. But let's go to like the inputs. So let's say if we have this going into a mono input, that when we go to look at the input channels, so say we see our input channels and we'll see these, and sometimes these may be hidden by default, but you want to just come over like into the mixer and make sure that the input channels are set. So sometimes people will, the input channel may get kind of attenuated. So if it's down by minus 40 dB, I would make sure that your input channel is set to like 0 dB and isn't being kind of attenuated or taken down. So if I move this here like this, we would say, okay, this is going to, basically take the incoming signal from the through the input channel, and then at that point it's going to drop it down 40 dB as it's before it's recorded. So make sure that your input channels are set all the way up, and you could see kind of the metering here on the input channels from your signal from your Apollo. So give that a shot and let me know if the input level is set incorrectly. See, can Cubase 10 owners watch too? Of course, no problems at all. So we'll, and you don't even have to be a Cubase user to watch. My mom sometimes watches, so. All right, so we see Spike, who's joining from Wales. So thanks for joining us. Okay, so I see how can I link MPC Studio to Cubase the best way? So probably, what I would do, so I'm not that familiar if you're treating it as kind of like a sequencer where you wanted to do sequencing in the MPC. Probably I would go to the transport and go to the synchronization setup. and we would want to activate external sync. So if we just come right over here, we could just say activate external sync. And when you come over here, we probably would just say we want to have our timecode source as MIDI timecode, and then we could send MIDI timecode out to wherever the MPC is connected, and that would synchronize the two. And you should be able to use it as a MIDI controller while you're working. So if you wanted to like make beats with the pads for sounds internally to Cubase. So. All right, so we have a question from Pylon Records. Hi, Greg and everyone. Hope you're doing well. Can you please show us how to create a 5.1 track and extract files from a 5.1 DVD? My only master is this 5.1 DVD. Cheers, James. All right, so generally, if it's on a DVD, it's going to be encoded. So if it's a DVD audio, which is probably pretty rare, at that point, it's going to be kind of copy protected in the encoding. So basically, when you're listening to most DVDs, it is basically an encoded DTS or Dolby AC3 stream. And then, so it's two channels that are encoded. And if you listen to it without the encoding, it doesn't make any sense. So when you play it through your stereo receiver, at that point, it will decode it so that what was 6 channels, the 5.1 source is basically gets compressed down to 2 channels. The 2 channels is then decoded through your stereo receiver to have it listen to 6 channels. Now with DVD, so that will involve some data compression. And there's arguments as to which system, the two big ones were DTS or Dolby AC3, which one sounds better, and you could argue about it, and many people did for long periods of time. But basically, you can't necessarily extract the 5.1 legally. So it's kind of encoded for copy protection means. What some people will do is if you can find a DVD player that has many of the ones, like I have a Pioneer unit, and I got it because it was common, and I got a lot of people that were doing like surround mixes on it, like Phil Ramone. I remember suggesting this one. It was a Pioneer unit that could play DVD-A, SACD, and DVDs all from one unit, which is pretty rare at the time, and it had 5 analog outputs. So what some people do is if you could find a DVD player with 5 analog outputs is to just take those 5 analog outputs and, connect them into 6 inputs of an audio, of your audio interface. And then if you wanted to record that, you could just say, okay, I want to add track, I want to add and we could choose 5.1 in the configurations. And then you could record 6 channels as inputs directly there. But most of the times you can't, you're not supposed to legally be able to extract the 5.1 from a particular DVD. So just a heads up there, and we kind of respect the intellectual property of that process. So. All right, we have Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Thanks for joining, as well as Razel from Denmark, both very loyal attendees. All right, Samson Strike is very anxious for his new Windows 12. So he checked that Verve is free for download on the window. So yeah, it's a wonderful instrument. And we have Michael Pierce from outside London joining us. All right, so we have a question, maybe a little stupid question, but how many outputs are needed for my interface to mix in 5.1? So we just kind of, what you would need is an audio interface that has six outputs. So it would need some way of being able to connect. Generally, what people do is take the outputs from their audio interface and connect it directly to powered speakers. So if you don't have 6 like analog outputs or 8 analog outputs, if your interface has a ADAT light pipe connection, you could then, get a converter that would go ADAT light pipe out of your audio interface into a converter, and from that converter out to your speakers. But generally, you need a way of getting 6 analog outputs for that. See Jazz Dude saying, and this is why people buy interfaces with 8 analog outputs. All right, and we have, I think it's Sesame Inc. or SESME Inc. from Central Florida. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see a question. I'd like to freely play a MIDI instrument without thinking of tempo, then adjust a grid to the tempo of my MIDI clip I just played. How? So we can do this with tempo detection. So let me just open up a particular file. I think I have one that could show this. All right, so say we have like kind of a freely played piano piece. So what I can do is I'm going to just select this, go to your project menu, and say, let's go to tempo detection. We'll say analyze. And now it's created a tempo map based upon the actual performance, the freely played performance without a click track. So again, select the event, go to your project menu to tempo detection. And then Cubase will give you the actual created tempo track based on that. Okay, so we have a question from Michael Pierce. Hi, Greg. Is there a way of using the project logical editor or some such to move all events with the same name to a specific track? Got an AAF that was a total mess this weekend. Would have been handy. All right, yeah. So all right. So let's take a look at an example here. Let's just create. All right, so I'll just kind of create a particular track. All right, so let's say I'll just do a bunch of quick recordings here. Just create some audio files. And we'll give these the name of Pierce. Okay, so I'm gonna just add a number of blank audio tracks. Okay, so let's say we have a number of tracks like this, and we wanted to move all of these, I guess, to like this one particular track. Okay, so I'm going to copy these events. And let's say I had the track name, so these are all kind of like Pierce. So I think that there is a, from edit, yeah, I just saw it a second ago. Let me just paste to matching track name. See if that. All right, let me just copy this. So you might be able to do something like that, but let's see if we can. Not sure if there's a function in the project logical editor to move the tracks, but let's take a look. We'll see if there's any. Look in the, haven't gone through all the presets. Let's see if we can. So you might be able to get that paste to matching track name function, but let's see if. Let me just see if I can find a function for just a key command. I think the function I'm looking for is under nudge. Okay, so let's say if I. Just find a, see if I can find a modifier here. right, so see if we, so if you just do the nudge up, so say if I take this, so if you have, so let's see if we, maybe we could take a different approach and see if we do a, all right, so maybe if we take like this particular track, and if we maybe have these two selected, all right, let me see if I can do just a quick project logical editor for selecting events that have the name. So let's say we will do container type is equal to event and the name contains Pierce. Yeah, there isn't a move to like a move function here, but let's say yeah, I might be able to spend some more time this evening on it, Michael. If you want to send me an email, maybe I could play around with it and see if there's a clever way of doing it. But if you kind of set the nudge up, you could just kind of like once we come here, let's say that that you could move the selected event up to the particular track, and it could be maybe with also tying into a preference where track selection follows event selection. So let me just see if I can find that preference. So track selection follows event selection. So you might be able to, just come here and let's say, okay, I have this track, and then if I nudge this up, and let's see if we go to, so I think if I spent time with it, I might be able to select like the top track and then be able to do some more stuff. But send me an email and I will see if I could figure out kind of a better workflow for you, Michael. Sorry about that. All right, so we have Tullamore Studio checking in from Belgium. We have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. Okay, so we just see a question. Since I upgraded to Cubase 12, whenever I record audio, it's recorded very low. How do I correct that issue, please? So again, check to make sure like your input channels aren't being attenuated here. So, for the particular channels. So I would check that. There's also maybe the possibility like that, see if the level is low or maybe just the amplitude that we're seeing is low. So sometimes we may, have, let's say we have an audio file that looks like this. We could also choose to attenuate and zoom the, we could choose to zoom the waveform here, depending on the audio file itself, but check your input channel and open up your input channel. And as you record in and see if the levels are, what you expect directly, as you're recording in, see if you adjust the input channel, if that makes a difference. It's probably going to be an input channel. Okay, so we have a question. Greg, what is the equivalent of a sample delay plugin in Cubase 12? Is there a stock plugin that can emulate the effect? So when you say sample delay, is it a, I'm not sure if it's a, some people will take, you could, if you wanted to delay tracks, we could do this by milliseconds here. We could also, if you're adjusting by the sample, so I'm not sure if it's like if we switched this, we could adjust the position, the start positions based on samples, or if you wanted to delay based on the sample level, or if you wanted a delay that was based on samples. But maybe if you could, Pablo, if you could specify what exactly you want for the sample delay. Or if you're looking kind of like for a looper type of, like a guitar looper type of workflow, if you could let me know, that would be great. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I see from RVO just saying, why is Greg skipping my question again? I've uploaded a question 2 times today and he ignores it. I don't think I've seen it. I'm just kind of scrolling back. I see VVC. All right, so I kind of went back on my stream here. All of my questions, I haven't seen any questions from you. Maybe the question, if it was too long, maybe it got cut off or something. So maybe if you just ask your question again. but I don't see any questions from you in the index in the chat. So sorry about that. All right, we have P Zone 36 from Gloucester, UK. Thanks for joining. All right, and we have Sir Robert from Atlanta who snuck in. And we have a girl named Nino joining us. All right, so we have a question from Rick Cooper. It says, I have a 192 capable sound card, but don't know that I understand how to maximize its capabilities with Cubase. Can you talk to that? And if needed, tell me how to modify Cubase. So if you wanted to record your project at 192 kilohertz sample rate, all you'd have to do is go to your project menu to project setup, and you'll see the record file format, and then you could select this to be 192K. So you could just set that there, and that will allow you to capture at the full audio resolution of your particular project. For some projects, you may not notice a huge difference depending on the type of material, but you could determine if that is worth the extra hard disk space and processing. So again, go to your project setup and just set your sample rate here to 192K before you record. And then as you record into your project, it would be recording at 192K. All right, so we have a question from John just saying, how to increase performance. Where do I set up buffer or CPU the best? Is it in the rack instrument where buffer is, or somewhere in Cubase references or audio device settings? So where you could set the buffer is going to be in your studio setup and under audio system. So there's some things you could make sure that you could have. It's usually the default settings here will make sure that ASIO guard is turned on, that multi-processing is enabled. If you're on Windows, you'll see a Steinberg power scheme. But if you wanted to adjust specifically the buffer size of your audio interface, in audio system, select your audio interface here and then go to control panel, and that will open up the control panel for your audio interface, and you could set the buffer there. So once again, go to your studio menu to studio setup, and then select your audio interface under audio system and go to control panel. And then you could set the buffer directly there. You don't need to do it within the instrument. It's the DAW that's going to set that value and not on an instrument basis. All right, so we see Mark Rabin is joining us mobile today. So all right, so we see just a question about the Lin 1. It just says, so the Lin 1 doesn't do the sample and or bitrate conversion, though. I meant if I have a 96K 24-bit project and I want to make a 44.1 16-bit, how do I do the conversion first before exporting? Or it's just as you do the export audio mixdown, you would just, that's when the conversion goes on. So as soon as you say, okay, I want it to be here a 24-bit 48K file, whatever you want, at that point, that's when the conversion. And if you have the particular Lin 1 dither like on your stereo out, that's when it gets employed at that point. So the plugin itself doesn't do sample rate conversion or bit depth conversion. Cubase will do that and then utilize the Lin 1 dithering during the process. All right. So we have Vincenzo checking in from Italy. Thanks for joining us. All right. And we have Nick joining us as well. reading through comments, and we see Michael Teams is distributing virtual ice cream. All right, we have Captenergy Music from out in Pennsylvania. So I see Greg, your mom is not a Cubase user. She is pro on Nuendo. So yeah, she's gonna fix her clarinet recordings from high school. So. All right, so we just see a question. Hey, friends, what stock plugins would you recommend to get a bright Victor Wooten bass sound? So probably the first thing you want to do is to make, you could do a lot of it with EQ. There's probably very specific EQs. So you could check out, like the stock EQ can get you a long way there. But if you wanted to get very precise, you could use the frequency EQ. But probably for bright sounds, is making sure that the bass itself has lots of, has probably active electronics, for it to be kind of bright. So often active electronics and new strings. So probably new strings would be very, make the biggest difference. So. All right, just reading through comments. All right, so we see hi, is anyone having a problem to play videos on Cubase with a Mac? Any ideas how to resolve this issue? Sorry for my English. So generally, like video files aren't consistent at all. If you say, oh, I have a QuickTime file, I have an MP4 file, it could be like 10,000 different versions of an MP4 file. So if you go to the Steinberg website, we'll just take a quick look. There we go there. So let's just say, I'll just Google, and there's an article that will tell you the codecs and containers. All right, so if you get to this Help Center article, just video support Nuendo Cubase, this will go through your supported video formats, the frame rates, the container, and which codec. So those are some of the different support. So, unlike a WAV file that will basically play in anything that plays a WAV file, video will be significantly different for that. So. All right, we have Fab GM checking in from Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Should I still lose all my instruments whenever I remove the toggle? If not, how do I correct the problem, please? So let me just see if it's with like the dongle, so many of the instruments, let me just see if it's, will still require the USB-E licenser, but let me just check because I know there's a, okay, so you had a question earlier about the record levels. So yeah, if it's dealing with the like some of the Steinberg instruments, not all of them have migrated over to the new licensing system, but everything is kind of being worked on. I think we'll see Nuendo be the third program to migrate to the new licensing system tomorrow. And Michael Pierce wants people to smash the like button, and that enables us to continue to do these live streams and for everyone that watches them. So appreciate the support. All right, so we see Captenergy Music just saying, I just want to thank you again for your tip shared last stream about saving instruments, effects, configurations. It was exactly what I needed. And once again, I will say, you are the man. So I try to be as good as you. So. Okay, so I just see, how do I register the output of an instrument track on an audio track? So if you wanted to record the outputs from the instrument, so what you could do is let's say, I'll just do Howling Sonic SE. All right, so let's say, all right, so if you wanted to record like the audio output from or record the audio output from the instrument into a track, if that's what you want. Let me know if I'm misunderstanding. But what we could do is we could route a group channel to that selected track, and we'll just say, okay, let's make it a stereo group. And what I want to do now is to add an audio track, and we'll set its input from the group. So now as I can record both MIDI and audio simultaneously if they're both record enabled. So now I'll just zoom in here. So that's how you could kind of work. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding you, Vincenzo. All right. So I see Jazz Dude also went through and didn't see RVO's question. So sorry if I'm missing them, but if you wanted to try to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I might be able to take a look at it for you as well. So I keep my eye out for it. And as Jazz Dude mentioned, Benny had run into this before. All right, so we have Madge checking in from the UK. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so I see just a comment about, I think it's from Best Korean Jesus, as a, so, and this might be with, I think a question with like not being able to set the snap point in an audio recording in the sample editor. And this behavior did change in version 10. So I think this might have been from the video. So let's say if we are just in our sample editor and if we go to the beginning, we may not see this snap point. So if we don't see the snap point, what you want to do is to come over here, and there's these new little settings here of like what you're seeing. So because we could edit multiple events within the sample editor. So if we wanted to, if we have this set to show as clips, we don't see the snap point turn on. But if we have this set to show events, then the snap point is visible. Or if we have it to show clips and events, then the snap point will be visible. But if it's just set to show clips, at that point, the snap point isn't visible. So let me know if that helps with that. So again, set this little icon here to show clips and events or show events. And then the snap point will become visible. All right. All right, going through some more comments here. Okay, just reading through more comments. All right, so we just see Michael Team saying, I just saw that JYP Entertainment, big K-pop producer, uses Cubase. Yeah, so we have a lot of K-pop users. And it's kind of interesting. Teddy Riley, a few years ago, was doing a bunch of K-pop. So, all right, so we have a question. Is there a place/app to learn to make better mixes, especially vocals? My Cubase workflow is now quite efficient. Thanks, Greg, but my ears and judgment need more training. Still far from pros. You know, I think everyone that's really good at mixing, you know, one of the things, you know, my friend Ed Cherney, who passed away a couple years ago, like, you know, my favorite quote I ever heard him say was, you know, it's like, my engineering got so much better when I started working with better bands and musicians. So, but, you know, you just kind of have to make mistakes, but, you know, try to just make sure that, you know, you could hear every syllable, you know, and if you get a good recording, that's half the battle. And then you could just, you know, make little subtle tweaks and adjustments. But you probably just have to, you know, just work through it. And, you know, if you work with better singers, it's easier. All right, so we see Jesse Carmichael. He'll be our celebrity attendee today. Any chance we could check out some tips today for time correcting an audio file of something like a guitar part or percussion part? So if you're on Cubase 12, it's pretty easy to now, we have the ability to just come over here and we could go to free warp, like directly on the project window. So anytime that audio is recorded, it will kind of get hit points on the file here. So let's say I just recorded this little sample based material here. So let's go to, so I will just double click and we'll go to the sample editor and we'll look at hit points here. So we could just say, okay, I want to adjust, let's say my threshold, and let's say just a little bit of the intensity. So we could, so say we want this. So once we do this, we could now go to your audio menu, and then you could choose to, under real-time processing, you could create warp markers from the hit points. So as we want to go in this sample editor, you could go to free warp, and then you could just, freely move the different notes around like so. In Cubase 12, we could also just come over here and do free warp on the main project window. So you may have to kind of zoom in a little bit. And as we kind of get to the right of it, and as we move over, we see kind of this vertical line to the left of the left arrow. So as it turns to white, at that point, we could just come right over here and we could adjust kind of the timing position of that particular event to make different timing. So that way is an easy way of just kind of warping and being able to make, different, where the musicians are coming in a little late, a little early. Once you also have that done, you could just say, I want it, and I didn't record this to the grid at all, but, you could say, I wanted to quantize. So we could, again, just come over here to even your quantize setup. Go to your quantize panel. If you have audio warp active, you could choose to just quantize different performances. And if you have a groove, let's say you just lay down like a really funky guitar pattern that you want the drums to follow, you could come over to the hit points in a particular event here. So let's get to our hit points, and we could create a groove, and this is loaded up into the quantize presets. And then at that point, if we had, let's say, warped most of the material together here, so let's say, okay, I just have this particular groove going on, and I've moved different stuff, we could now quantize based on the actual groove from the audio file as well. So those are a couple things. Let me know if that helps, Jesse, and thanks for joining us on the live stream. All right. So we see Mark Rabin saying hi again. All right. Okay, so we have a question. When I import MIDI files with some tracks and not instruments, I noticed that Cubase 12 create another tracks, but I can't delete them. Thanks. So sometimes when you import MIDI files, it may automatically like load up like an instrument rack. So it might automatically load up, let's say, a Hallian Sonic SE. And we would often see these like on the project window here. So if it's these files that you see, you may just want to come here, and we could just say on the, if it's just I think if we just wanted to come here, we could just say, if you click in the name and then just choose no VST instrument, that those would go away. So let me know if it's just the instrument track. Sometimes you may have MIDI files that will contain lyrics and have kind of like different data for the MIDI file themselves. So, if you go to look at the MIDI part, perhaps in the list editor, at that point you may see that there's a lot of different information for standard MIDI files. So as you would go to insert, let's say if we come over here, we can say, okay, I just wanted to, so some of them may be different types of MIDI data that's being inserted here that's associated with the MIDI file, like names or lyrics, stuff like that. So often when I get the question, it's just that it's an instrument that's loaded and they can't get rid of it. So just come over here and choose no VST instrument in the instrument rack on the right hand side. Let me know if that's what you're talking about. All right, we have Gerald Ely checking in from California. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we see from Thomas, hi Greg, just logged in, appreciate these live streams. His question is, I'm learning a lot, maybe off topic for today, but I can't seem to find the loop recording lanes. Any tips? I'm on AI 11. So when we're doing kind of looping, so let's come over here and let me see, I think I have a project, yeah. So just open this one up. So often it may be just a, show lanes function that you could have. So if you don't see this, and I think it's in AI as well, but if you don't see this show lanes button, try to right click in the track area and go to track control settings. And then once we're in the track control settings, you could have visible and hidden objects. So make sure that the lane display type, if it's in the hidden objects, just select it here in the hidden objects column and then add it to the visible options. So then it should show up right there. So give that a try. So we have a question, and it's about the Lin 1 dither. So just wondered if the Lin 1 would be effective in output of a 24-bit 96K before exporting it to 16-bit 44.1. So definitely. So that's kind of the intention of the dithering process for that. Okay, so just kind of a clarification on the sample delay. It says, for example, it delays the sound by milliseconds to pan left or right. So if we have so let's say if I add an audio track, I'll just make this and let's come over here to our sends. So, any of the delays, let's say, okay, I want to do like a ping pong delay. At this point, we could just choose to set the values in left and right. We could also just do a stereo delay. So if we do our stereo delay, we could have, and again, if we disable sync, we could have our delay time down to 0.1 milliseconds. So different values in the left and the right channels. So, so we can see, and we got the panning set kind of independently here for each of those delays. So, and if you want to get really way over the top, you could get into the multi-tap delay. And this is probably like the most comprehensive delay plugin, where each delay tap could be run through independent effects. So if you wanted to just look at, some of the different options that you could have here for your delays, but, generally any of those would allow you to work in milliseconds and have left and right settings. So I think that should kind of meet what you want to do, Pablo, but if not, let me know. Yeah. So if you want to do kind of like a Haas effect, you could just simply do that very easily. So that's where you kind of pan hard left, hard right vocals in opposite, like with different delay times. But I think your stereo delay should be able to do that for you. All right, so we see a question from Martin from Denmark. Is it possible to edit 2 MIDI tracks at once? So certainly. All right, so one of the ways to do it is just to say, okay, I want to edit my bassoon and violin part. So if I wanted to do this, we could now go into our editor. So let's say as we do this, and we could choose to colorize by, if we wanted to differentiate, we could choose let's colorize by part. So I could see the different, so this would be my oboe or my bassoon and say string. So we could edit both of those parts. If you wanted to have each of these be in separate key editors, which is a question I get often, you can come over to the preferences. And I think the default preference, you'd want to go to the editors and maybe uncheck editor content follows event selection. So what we could do now is I'm going to just edit the bassoon. And let's say we have this as a separate window. And now I want it to go to the violin. Let's put this as a separate window over here. And if you're good with your window management, unlike myself, that you could now just kind of see 2 different events at once, each within their own editor. So again, to do that, just come over to the preferences, and at this point, editor content follows event selection, uncheck that. So let me know if that helps. All right, just reading through comments here. All right, so we have Peter from Belgium. This is his first live stream, but not his last. So thanks for joining us, and welcome to the community. And we see Sable Winters on the live stream. All right, so we see a question from Kevin. So glad you can make the live stream today. When will WaveLab Pro go to the new e-licenser system? So the new system is an e-licenser, but it hasn't been announced when it will be going. But I think it might be coming, before expected. So, but then it will be on the Steinberg Activation Manager. So. All right. So we just see, I just want to talk saying, hey, Greg, got a long time issue with Cubase stability. Don't know how to fix it. First, I need to explain you all. It's a little long, so please be patient with my comments. Yeah, and if you want to send an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, be happy to take it there if it's going to be long, because I know there's a character limitation on comments within the chat. So, but you could just let us know either way. All right, and just see a comment from Pablo just saying the stereo delay, but the minimum delay time is too long to pull off the effect. Thanks. So make sure that you actually put it into milliseconds, because you get down to, 1/10 of 1 millisecond. So you should be able to do that. All right, we have a question. Greg, what do you like to see next on Cubase? What are your feature requests? So I have some that I've shared with Steinberg. I've asked for like a lyric track. I think that would be kind of interesting for people tracking vocals. But most of my feature requests have, have made its way in, and plus many others that I would never expect to get in. So, but that's just one thing off the top of my head. So. All right, so we just see this for comments is see on Cubase 11 or previous versions, I got plugins that crash once I drag it into Cubase. I've been searching on how to fix it. I found a way by going to the Cubase desktop icon, and I press right click on a desktop icon, go to properties and press compatibility and go to versions. And I press Window 8. How do I fix the problem always with every Cubase version? So, if it's going to be, sometimes there's plugins that cause system instabilities, and it could be out of the range of Cubase, so that may be helping your particular plugin. But if you could let us know if it's actual, if it's limited to particular plugins that you could isolate it to, but that would be helpful. So I see from Richard James, question, is it possible to download the marker list as an Excel document or something I can edit in another program? So I think if you, if you export a MIDI file, that the markers will be exported as within the standard MIDI file. So I know some people do that to migrate markers. Sorry for hitting my mic, but to migrate markers between different programs. And there might be something that could take, could extract like the MIDI file information into Excel. I'm kind of an Excel idiot. So I'm not the best one to ask, but I could do some research on it. But I know Nuendo has the capability of, exporting. I know it can import CSV files. I'm not sure if it exports the markers as CSV, but it's a common way, like in post-production for dialogue tracks, for localization for different languages to be done. But I think you can just, maybe, try the standard MIDI file way. Okay, so we just see this is a follow up from one of the questions about the low recording level. It says, I wasn't clear before. Although I have recording, when I record, the image is basically a straight line. Although the input channels are on 0, the volume is low. So, as you're monitoring, do you see, if you could let us know if you see the signal here and what source that you're recording? So if it is a condenser microphone, do you have phantom power turned on? If it's a line, if it's you're recording a guitar or bass directly, do you have the high Z input on? So if you look at the levels here, make sure that you're seeing signal on the input channels to start with. And if you're not seeing this, and make sure that that in your studio setup that, and when you go to your audio connections, that you have your inputs defined correctly there as well. But if you're not seeing it on the input channel here, that would indicate that Cubase isn't receiving any input signal. So that would be somewhere to look first. So look to see if it's on, if you're seeing signal on your meter and that the routing in the audio connections is set, because and that would indicate, and first thing is always make sure that you have the correct audio interface selected in your audio system as well. All right, so we have Otis Richardson just says, hi, I'm just getting in and I'm new to Cubase, so thanks for joining the live stream, and please feel free to ask any questions that you have. And welcome to the live stream. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to get a synced digital audio stream from a second PC into Cubase just over a network without using an audio interface, A to D, D to A conversion, a VST or virtual interface? So you might be able to, I'm not sure if it's going to be, could depend on what your definition of synced digital audio is. One of the things that people will often use to pass audio over standard network connections is going to be Dante. So it's a company called Audinate. It's an Australian company. And it's often used for large sound. So large live sound and kind of fixed installations where, audio needs to be distributed throughout like a casino or a concert hall, where you hear it, like when you go to the restroom, you hear a mix going into the bathroom. Stuff like that. So maybe check out something like Dante, and they sell what's called DVS, which is a Dante virtual sound card. And that would allow you to use and pass audio directly over, a standard Ethernet connection. But I'm not sure if you're trying to synchronize that connection with another connection, you may not be able to. But generally, synchronizing digital audio would entail making sure that the word clock between two devices is synchronized and connected, so that the clock is actually in sync, which could be critical for proper synchronization of audio. So. All right, so we see just kind of further discussion of the plugins that are causing crash. So, if the plugins are recognized by MediaBay and kind of registered, it doesn't mean that the plugins are stable. So if you could let us know if it's a particular plugins that are causing the issues. All right, so we see Otis Richardson just saying he's weighing all the features against Studio One. So one of the great features. I think that you'll notice that that Cubase is probably the program that defines the feature set for other programs. So when you mention MIDI, ARA, chord track, so Steinberg's had chord track for almost 10 years, or probably 8 years or so, no, almost 10. So, we kind of define the state of that. And we also have these live streams for 8 hours a week where you could learn all sorts of wonderful tips and tricks in a friendly environment. All right, so we see, can you please show me about opening a Cubase 12 track in Wavelab Pro 11? So again, all you have to do is go to a project that has some audio in it. Okay, so if we select the event and we wanted to edit it in Wavelab, we just go to select the event, go to your audio menu, and go to edit in Wavelab. Okay, and it's in musical mode. Sorry about that. So I'll just bounce it quickly. All right, so at this point, we would just say edit in Wavelab. And now Wavelab's going to launch in the background for us. And we'll have our audio file here. And then when you're done, if we do a change, all you have to do is trigger the Cubase/Nuendo update. And whatever changes we do in Wavelab will automatically be reflected back into Cubase. All right, so we see from Jesse Carmichael, thanks, Greg. Anyone know how can we see the grid lines in the sample editor? So all you have to do is you'll see this little line right here. So let me just see if I can. I'll just throw another audio file in where it's maybe less rhythmic. Okay, so now as soon as we click here, just to the left of bar, then you could see the grid lines show up. And if we say, okay, let's make it beat, we can just kind of, as we zoom in, so just make sure that we just click right here, and then that will show the grid lines in the sample editor, and that's in version 12. So I think 11 kind of has it on by default. So let me know if that helps, Jesse. Okay, so we have a question. Why does the octave chords change after 4 bars? For example, I mean here when I choose from the chord track. Okay, so let's say we're choosing from the chord track. All right, so let's say if I just I drag these out from okay, so it says why does the octave chords change after 4 bars, for example? So let's say if I'm just so the one thing to check. So I'm not sure when you say changes after 4 bars. So when you choose from the chord track, so one thing that you might want to check is just to make sure, because you're going to have different voicing options. So if you select a chord track here, maybe if you set up the voicings, you could set the lowest note and the highest note directly laid out, just like so. So let me know if that helps, or maybe if you could ask the question perhaps a different way that I could understand it a little easier. That would be great. All right, so we have a question from DJ Mad. When you were just doing the warp quantize earlier, I noticed that when you was done the grid data, yes, in minisec instead of going back to 16 or so, I'm having the same problem. So I'm not sure if it's just, like as we do warp editing, it could have been that I had, my master time set to at one point I'd switched it to samples. But whenever I'm here, we could just, do whatever warping that we want. So say, even if I'm just on, so as we would just warp here, so we could just kind of warp. So let me just and one of the things that you could also do, like, as you do nudging in version 12, one of the things that you could do is you could have this you could have like nudging and probably some of the different editing tasks linked to the primary time format or independent. So I could say, okay, my primary time is in bars and beats, but as I do edits, I want the edits to be nudged by seconds. So maybe that's what you noticed. So when you go to the grid settings, you could have it be independent or locked to the primary grid format. Just reading through, see Murray Webster just saying thanks for the Lin 1 info. All right, so Thomas, just about I think it's with the lanes. So I'm not sure if that is in the AI version or not. I could check after the live stream. Okay, so I just see I'm using Cubase 12 in a new podcast project and using Halion 6 for several instruments. I can't color the MIDI tracks associated with Halion. Okay, so let's say I want to, we'll add an instrument track. So let's say I'll start with Hallian. Okay, and I'll add a number of MIDI tracks that will share the same port, so we can do MIDI and instrument tracks. All right, so once I come here, I'm going to select all the Hallian tracks, and if I wanted to change the color, I could just go to the color tool, and now they'll all change accordingly. So let me know if I'm doing something differently than what you're doing, but so, and now like if we record it on all these tracks, all these events, all right, so now all the events would carry the same color as the tracks. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding or if that makes sense and answers your question, Kenneth. All right, so we see from Spike Williams, Greg is clearly telepathic. He just answered a question I was about to ask. Awesome work, Greg. You know, it's probably, I was answering someone else's question, so it's probably the other person who was telepathic. So I can't really take credit for it. All right, so you see more discussion. I guess it's a SoftTube plugin that's causing problems. I'll take a look. I think I have the SoftTube plugins and see if it causes issues on my studio system. But sometimes if it's just going to be like that particular plugin, you know, that could be indicative that that plugin is just not very stable. Okay, so we see question. So it says, I see a question or maybe it's a comment. I only use dither when changing sample rates on master 44.1 to 48. Is there really need for dither on low dynamics EDM content with much tape or so? Just for, I see kind of an emoji or so you know, you could try with and without dither and see if it makes a difference. So it may not be as critical for certain genres. You know, like if you're doing, you know, perhaps like a, you know, like a death metal thing, you know, it may not be as critical as if you were doing, you know, a really sparse string quartet, you know. All right, so we see from Otis Richardson, just says trying to figure out how to get a similar workflow in Cubase as the Studio One mix engine effects. If so, I'm not sure what the mix engine effects is. If that is like kind of where they model different consoles and stuff like that. So you know, we have different plugins for different flavors, but it's not necessarily a turn this on and you have an SSL console, turn this on, you have a Neve console, if that's the type of thing. I haven't found any of those to actually sound like the particular consoles that they're emulating, but you know, it often changes the graphics and it makes the user feel good. So, but if you get if it's something else, just let me know. I'd be happy to kind of See if we can figure out the equivalent for you. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is it possible to make my own custom flex phraser in Hallion 6? Any better view of existing phrases? Thank you for your help. All right, so we have Hallion loaded up. So let's come over here and I'll just load up just a quick. Okay, so let me just. Okay, and put this on the right MIDI channel here just real quick. All right, so let's come over here and see. All right, so let's say we want to do like flex phraser stuff. So let's come over here. And I think if we go to edit and then we go into MIDI, that we could activate our flex phraser here. So let's say I just wanted to. So obviously there's going to be a number of different string parts. So let's just say. So now when I play, so I just kind of play one chord, as you can see in this keyboard, and it's going to. All right, so I think if we come over here, so let's say if we activate. All right, so I think that I've kind of stumbled across this in a live stream recently. So let's say if I go to user preset here. All right, and I just wanted to. All right, and so if I come here, let's say I tweak. So notice that if we come over here and maybe save the preset, that it goes, you can have the flex phraser preset just kind of recalled here. So let's say we'll call it April 26th. So now you could just have kind of different presets. So if you could just kind of click directly here and maybe go to the user presets. So let's say if we have a different that I could now just come right over here and go to April 26th. So try that and let me know if that works for you. So once you're in the flex phraser, click on user, and then when you come over here, you could save the preset or delete presets from the flex phraser. So try that. All right, so we have Brianna checking in from Youngstown, Ohio. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see how about a PC optimization video for Cubase, or rather Windows optimizations for Cubase. So there's a lot of videos on there available for kind of setting up, and there's articles on the Steinberg website for kind of optimizing your PC or Mac for that. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff that can change without us realizing what's going on as well. So some tweaks may get changed as operating systems update, but I'm sure there's probably a lot of information on the Cubase Nation Discord. See, also see the Omni channel from Wave will ruin my project I put it on, will crash Cubase all the time. Okay, so I just see question. Hi, why my RevX reverb doesn't work without the dongle on Cubase 12. So the RevX reverb, you have kind of two different versions of the RevX reverb. One could be associated that's run in real time with the particular audio that's run off of the DSP of the audio interface, and then you could also install it as plugins. So the plugins, as soon as we come over here, so let's say if we add an effects channel track and we wanted to run, and you get these with being a Steinberg user or like a Steinberg hardware user. So you have these options. So we go to reverb, you could just go to like your RevX plate. And as we do this, and these plugins are still licensed off of, they don't come with Cubase, so it's an extra plugin that comes with Steinberg hardware. So that's why it's like it's still using the e-licenser system, and it hasn't been updated to the new Steinberg licensing management. So it's not a stock Cubase plugin; it's an add-on plugin from Yamaha for the Steinberg like UR, AXR, MR interfaces. All right, so we see Ben Nee is just saying 100 likes, keep going. So yeah, we appreciate all the likes. See how we're doing on time. Okay, doing pretty well. All right, we see Gareth on the live stream. And Gareth has already had 2 revelations of the day: color MIDI is part and open multiple MIDI windows. And we see just commented Dante is also used for Dolby Atmos. Yeah, so basically it's just, it's not specifically for Atmos, but it just allows you to get a lot of channels of audio spread around. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so we see Pablo just mentioning it's the simplest things that drive you insane, especially coming from an RDAW. I didn't factor in disabling sync on the delays. Thanks again. So hopefully that should be able to get you your Haas effect if that's what you're going for. Okay, so we see from Steven, just says, thank you, Graham, checking out the Dante virtual sound card. Looking to run VCV Rack 2 on the second PC because it's a pig. Was hoping to use MIDI for sync and network to capture audio. So you may also, if you're looking to kind of allocate resources where you have, you know, I'm not sure if the VCV rack, if that's like a Vienna, you know, but a lot of people looking to kind of free up resources and use two different computers could use like, you know, VE Pro 7 from like Vienna. So that's another option to kind of check out. And I believe that it's just kind of handled over like a network switch, but you don't have to use Dante for that. So that'd be something else to kind of check out if you're looking to have one machine host VST instruments and another kind of capture the audio and be the host for all the MIDI information that's played through another computer. Okay, so just see from Murray says, when using large buffer sizes, is there any way to synchronize the scroll bar? It is somewhat annoying when the optic is way ahead of the audio. If there's some way to synchronize, that would be great. So I don't think I've actually noticed that the buffer size is causing something to be out of sync, but let's go ahead and give it a shot. So just activate this project. So let's say we're now at like a 192K buffer. And let's just kind of zoom in and we'll just solo the kicks, make sure. All right, and we'll take this and we'll just run the buffer up higher. So let's say 2048. So it still seems to be visually in sync. And I'll just hit follow here. So if we just solo the drums, we could see those with transients. So that's at 2048. So it doesn't seem like there's any sync issues visually of what's going on. So maybe it's some other cause that is causing the issue. But that's at 2048 samples. Maybe it's a graphics card driver issue, something like that. Okay, just reading through some comments. So thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so we see question, hey Greg, do you know how to fix any issues with the auto scroll in the key editor? Mine is janky and jumps around a bit. I'm on Windows 11, Cubase 12. This happened in Cubase 11 on Windows 10 too. All right, so let's just we'll do Beatles and Stones since everyone loves that song. And everyone's anxiously awaiting Sable's version. All right. And kind of a further comment on this is just also I do have an NVIDIA GPU and heard that it could be part of it. I tried setting Cubase to use max power and run the latency mon software to make sure it's running the best it can. So yeah, I mean, that could definitely, you know, like we hear a lot of issues about this with kind of, so with NVIDIA drivers and devices. So let's say if we want to open up our key editor here. We'll just zoom in here. So I'll just put follow on.
Leave it alone. Now you're asking Beatles or Stones. Something about that just sounds so wrong. But it's too late to start a fight. Take the.
So it seems to be kind of behaving normally. I know there's kind of like a gaming mode on a lot of NVIDIA cards and maybe like a studio mode. And often kind of putting it in studio mode can make a difference. Perhaps other people, I think even Gareth had some issues with NVIDIA. Maybe other people could have, you know, that have dealt with the some display anomalies with NVIDIA systems could chime in. All right, so we have a question. Why doesn't the performance meter coincide with what Windows says is being used in CPU? I feel like I'm leaving some CPU power on the table somehow. Well, you know, when we look at the meters, you know, it's not a CPU meter. It's an audio performance meter. And those two things are separate, you know, because sometimes, you know, you may have like one plugin may, you know, like you can have like some sampler plugins, you know, if you load up multi-timbrally, you know, let's say if you have 8 instruments playing back from one particular instrument, some plugins will, you know, not scale across multiple CPUs. So it seems like Cubase is like, oh, you know, it's why is Cubase, you know, struggling with this? And it's because because of, you know, how DAWs work and how processing scheduling works, you know, everything could be utilizing one core. So after a while, you kind of sometimes can learn how to allocate your CPU usages. But, you know, realize that the performance meter in Cubase is not a CPU performance meter. It's an audio performance meter. And those are two kind of very different things. So you're probably not leaving anything on the table per se. See, Matt Elliston also wants a lyric track. So. All right, so just see, so I just see, yeah, mine, all right, so my chat field just jumped on me. Let me find my spot. Okay. Okay, so Richard James says, just noticed the bouncing blue meter in the bottom right, even when not talking, makes me think this must be your heartbeat. It's actually, I think it's my CC 121 controller. So a lot of controllers will kind of send out active sensing information. Just it's almost like a little handshake saying, "Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here," and that's what you're seeing is the MIDI meter. So if I turned off my CC 121, that's what it's showing. So it's not my heartbeat. So. All right, so we see from Kevin, can you show me updated tribe work in hypnotic? I guess it's hypnotic dance. So they haven't really been updated, Kevin. So I don't think there's any differences than in previous versions. All right, so I just see a question. Do you have any experience mapping the MIDI fighter twister? Can't get my head around it at the moment. Does anybody here have a mapping for it? So I'm not familiar with the MIDI fighter twister, but it's kind of an ironic name if you can't get something to work that's fighting with you and twisting around. So, but maybe someone else has used it. So we see, and maybe a follow-up question from Murray just saying, or with Avid Artist and Control. So I think that the MIDI mapping, I'm not sure if the Yukon is actually transmitting MIDI data or if it's kind of transmitting kind of its own protocol. So I'm not sure if that's MIDI based, but if it's MIDI based, you could definitely, remap things quite easily. So. Okay, so we have a question. So Greg Leon here from the UK. Leon from the UK here. When using a 32-bit input device, for example, the UR24C, and record in 32-bit in Cubase 11 Pro, firstly, can peak the recording, and so if it can be recovered flat tops on the WAV file. So it depends if you're, so when you deal with like the UR24C, every converter can be clipped depending on how much signal you're sending into it. So the internal resolution is going to be much higher on a 32-bit fixed point. Now, sometimes there's confusion between a 32-bit fixed point and 32-bit floating point. There's a lot of systems out there that have 32-bit floating point, where it's actually writing a 24-bit word, and then it will add additional space or headroom for additional information for accommodating like different DSP processing and mixing and real-time effects. So that 32-bit floating point has a theoretical dynamic headroom of around 1,592 dB versus, I think, like 144 dB for 24-bit audio. So theoretically, it's possible. It's just really, really hard to actually clip. And there's some companies, there's a number of hardware companies kind of mismarketing 32-bit floating point as 32-bit fixed point, and with the UR24C interface, you do get the 32-bit fixed point, and you could also record at 32-bit floating point or 64-bit floating point. See Paul Mallett just said, wow, the flex stuff just blew my mind. Cubase is so deep. Yeah, so it's a part of Hallian Sonic or Hallian. All right. So look forward to, I see Garrett's comment. He'll send me the tracks again on WeTransfer. So look forward to that. So sorry about being lame and not getting the files downloaded. We're just going through our end of corporate fiscal year reporting stuff. So it's been kind of crazy week. Okay, so we see, hi, Michael Drake from High Point, North Carolina. I would like a more detailed video on how to mix in Dolby Atmos. So, you know, I mean, we can show you how to kind of get your project set up, you know, but so as you were kind of starting, we'll just do a new project. So let's say I want to come here and I'm going to make sure that my sample rate is set to 48K. And we need the buffer size on our audio interface to be set to a buffer of 512. So we'll come over here to the control panel and let's set their buffer to 512. I'm going to have a number. Let's say I have 16 or so audio tracks. All right, and what I want to do now is, so let's say if I wanted to take all these tracks and get them ready for mixing in Dolby Atmos, I'm gonna just come over here. Let's go to the project menu and let's go to ADM authoring for Dolby Atmos, and there's a setup assistant. So we'll come right over here. So we'll say, okay, we want to add our main mix channel with the renderer. Let's add the bed, update. And so we want our main mix configuration to be 714, which is typical, and you want our bed to be 712. Okay, and now at this point, so we have our renderer. Now, if you're mixing on headphones, we could, so if you have a real Dolby Atmos room, a facility that has, you know, your 12 monitors here, we could just say we're going to down mix to 714 or down mix to 5.1. Or if you're doing this with headphones, you can down mix to binaural. And if we wanted to take all these different tracks and let's turn these tracks into objects, as soon as we come over to our authoring, we could now just come right over here, and under the functions, we can say, let's create objects from the selected tracks. Okay, so now anytime that we want to do mixing, we would just, if we go to our channel, we could now go to the panner. And as we go into the panner, you could say, okay, I want to click on this little icon here in the upper left-hand corner. And we could adjust not only the channel height, but, you know, we could do kind of the top view. So this is how, like if we were looking down from above, this is how our track would be panned. And then we could also see kind of the rear view where we could have our different values just kind of, you know, with our height. So if we wanted to move this to the front, to the back, and we use this for height control. So we could just come directly over here and be able to adjust, and all you have to do is just automate that. Once you're done with all of your tracking and automation, at that point, to get it to play back in other systems, you would just come back to the Dolby Atmos and just export it as an ADM file, and that will automatically be able to convert it to different mix configurations. So that's kind of a quick run through, but how you pan, it's really up to you. There's all sorts of different surround panning, options. Do you want to be in the middle of the band? Do you want it to be like you're watching, in a concert and you hear music behind you for a live thing? So there's all sorts of different stuff and different philosophies. Okay, so I just see it says, I have the question. I have the AXR4. Could you show what you think is the best setup for direct monitoring, headphone mixes, and control room within Cubase? With me, the reverb is very buggy to use. So as we come up here, so one of the things that we want to do, I'll just do a new project here quickly. So with the AXR4, something that's a little goofy sometimes is what I do on mine is, you need to have an actual output kind of set in the control room. So let me just remove this particular bus. Okay, so I'm going to come here and let's say I have my direct out here, and I'm going to just go to my control room. And I'm going to choose when we're doing tracking with the AXR4. And this is kind of something I think hopefully we'll see kind of fixed a bit in the future. So, when tracking, I tend not to use the control room, or I create kind of a dummy bus here. If you have multiple outputs, I just have a 2-out audio interface connected now. So you just come here. So I have my outputs physically connected, and then I have my inputs, and let's choose, okay, I wanted to set this to input 1. Okay, maybe I have it set as an external effect or input. Okay, so now I'm going to add an audio track, and I'll make it a mono track, and I want it to be set to this input, and we'll come over here and we'll make sure that this is going. All right, so it needs to kind of see like physical connections here. So let me just. And then at that point, once you have kind of the connection set up, and just check my connections here one more time, make sure. not sure if it's being, but then that's when you would see the, I mean, I have the actual extension installed, but that's when you would see the AXR control panel interface there. So make sure that when you're doing it, that you actually just turn, the control room you need to actually have the actual outputs defined here in this stereo out. So, and it's kind of annoying, but I think we may see some updates with that hopefully soon. Okay, just reading through. All right. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, so I think I'm back to where I was. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we see a question. Is there a way to apply a fade in and fade out with one key command? All right, so if we come over here, so let's say if we have like an audio file here. So, depending on, like if I grab the range selection tool, I'll just make this larger so we could see it easier. All right, so let's say if I just wanted to define where I wanted the range to begin and end, like this, I could just hit the letter A, and that will do fade in and fade out on the events. If you have like the range selected at the beginning and hit the letter A, it'll fade to that particular point. Or you could just simply, so depending where you are selected in the particular event, you could just, hit the letter A. So try that. Okay, so we have a question. So let's say Omnisphere. Is it better to have a new instrument for every sound or have 8 outs of one instance? You could do a test. I haven't checked Omnisphere to see if it does multiple, if it kind of utilizes multiple CPU cores. But it's always interesting just to do a test. Like if we have something like Hallian Sonic, we could come over to, so like even within, let's say Hallian Sonic, which is kind of the default instrument playback engine of Cubase. When we come here, we go to options. So check to see if it doesn't allow you to utilize multiple cores, then you're better probably running, 8 instances with one sound. If it can utilize multiple cores, it shouldn't make that much of a difference. But I haven't checked to see if Omnisphere is utilizing multi-core within a single instrument. All right, so we just see from Otis, just a clarification about the mix engine FX. It's just a way to have console emulations. So, Steinberg doesn't necessarily have console emulations. A lot of people kind of like to emulate the Steinberg console, the mix engine internally. But we don't have a parallel function. But, many of the processing can automatically just emulate different styles. All right, so we just see from Kevin, is the Zoom on Friday the 29th of April? So yes, we'll be doing the Zoom meetup on the next live stream. So we'll be doing a 2-hour Cubase, like a Club Cubase, like Q&A session like this, and then we'll be followed by 2 hours of the Zoom meetup. See some discussion of plugins running off GPU, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops. All right, so we see Michael Pierce. Is Atmos already in? Did I miss an update? So yeah, it was released in 12.01. So if you downloaded it, it's already there. And we'll give you that feature free just because we like you a lot, Michael Pierce. Okay, just reading through different comments. My chat field just jumped on me. Okay. Okay, still reading through comments here. That's a great discussion of the BIOS and different computer setups. Okay, so we see what are the various ways to automatically detect the pitch of samples, mainly one-shots. So, if we come over here, there's a couple different ways. So let's see if we can find some quick one-shots. Okay, let me set my control room back. All right, so let's say let's say we have this file in. So one is to, you could just double click and go to Vary Audio, and that will tell you the pitch. You could also select the particular event and go to Audio Statistics. And I think you can see the pitch indicated here. So, you can see that's E4. So those are a couple different ways. And then if you wanted to drop it into the sampler track, we could just drop it into the sampler track and say the root pitch is set to E. And at that point, you can just have it. So there's a couple ways, either with Vary Audio or the Audio Statistics, you could determine the pitch of a one-shot sample pretty easily. Okay, reading through comments here. All right, so we see Gerald's looking forward to Friday for the Zoom meetup. Okay, so it says, question, I need help with tempo detection and specifically the implementation. I can drag in a 2-track WAV file with an unknown tempo and open a tempo detection tool, but how do I set the actual tempo and then set it? Okay, so let's take a look. So it sounds like you want the tempo to actually play back consistently. Okay, so we have the tempo detection to determine what the tempo is, and then if we want the tempo to be set to another value. So let's say if we're here, so we listen to the metronome, obviously no correlation there. So say, okay, I want to do an offbeat correction. So this audio file has varying tempos here. So now I'm going to select the event. And if I want to set it to a new tempo, I go to Advanced. And then we say Set Definition from Tempo. And we can do this in the project or to the actual embed the metadata into the audio file. And now we can see our tempo fluctuating, but if I want it to be like 156 steady, or 140, $132. So once you have figured out what all the tempo changes are, select the event or events and go to Advanced. And at that point, just do set definition from tempo. Then whatever tempo you have here will the audio file will automatically follow. All right, so I see that it might be Michael Pierce's birthday. If so, just happy birthday, Michael. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button if you haven't done that. Okay, so I think I might be caught up with the questions. So, all right, so just see a couple come in. Okay, so I just see, I think this is from Sam Brown. Just says, moreover, I want to know what the session tempo of the wave file from another producer. I don't know how to find that out when they didn't add it in the metadata. So if you just do the tempo detection, you could do that. Okay, so we see it's not Michael Pierce's birthday today. Okay. Okay, so we have a question from Sergo just saying, question about the built-in arpeggiators, how to change their rhythmic patterns. There's a possibility of automation, but it's not very convenient. Explain how to work with Step Designer. So let's take a look at some of the arpeggios first. Right. All right, so let's just come over here. So let's say, all right, so I'm gonna go to my MIDI inserts here. So let's go to like Apache. Sorry about that. I must have got a stuck MIDI note there. So let me just reset. Okay, so let's say if I want this to be eighth notes, to 16th, or dotted 16th. So I don't know of a way to, let me see, just if they're in Apache SX, if there's a way to automate that. So let's say if we come to Apache SX, so I'm just kind of using my scroll wheel here, but may not be, I could probably use my, let's see if I could use my AI knob. So I don't think that it's kind of set up to change the size in real time, but you could probably just come here and modify it. So let's say at this point, I'll just take this and I'll record, and I'll go ahead and record with the so let me just. So say with the Apache SX, so I'm going to just record this. So as we play, so as let's say if I just load up a quick preset here. So I'm recording it in real time here. As soon as we select this, and now if I adjust my step size, that when we look at the events here, that they'll all be kind of just, we look at the different arpeggios. So you could just kind of do it like that, but I don't think it's really intended to be automated per se. Okay, so I see question, the tempo detection fluctuates every beat on the tempo. Any tips on figuring out the exact tempo from a song that was recorded with the metronome is? I hope I'm making sense. So often, you know, if it's an audio recording and it's real musicians, they're going to be fluctuating all the time. And there's not an exact, you know, if the tempo of the audio file is fluctuating constantly, then, you know, that's what the tempo detection will show. So you might just do an average. You can say, oh, it's going between 142 and 146. So maybe they are intending 144. So you kind of get an average of the particular files. So. So Gareth is saying, I'm composing the next John Carpenter film. So I think he actually composed all the music for, is he the one that composed all the music for his films? He's a neighbor with a friend of mine, so they hang out. He does, my friend does audio post-production, so. All right, so I know we had some questions that were sent in, so let me get to some of those. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. And if you have learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. Okay, so it says, question mailed in, I hope you're well. I have a request for help. I'm completely stuck with this. No idea how to solve this. I have used workarounds such as stretching the event and warping audio, but it's not ideal. Let me know what you think. Stupid question on how to quantize a rehearsal recorded song to a steady tempo on Cubase. Drums are MIDI recorded, and a guitar, bass, and vocals are microphones. Obviously not recorded with a click track. Is there any way that can be quantized to a steady tempo? Can you help? All right, so we just kind of were doing something very similar. And we'll do just kind of a full multi-track version. And I have a really good version of this. I can't really demo song for this. I can't really do on YouTube, but all right. Okay, so let's say as we're playing this, so let's take the multi-track version that we're. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm just going to take the overhead drum channels here and do a tempo detection based on that. So let's say live recording, not recorded to a click. So I'm going to just take my tempo detection from there. So let's say, okay, I want my signature track at the top. I want to move, let's say, my tempo track to the top here. Okay, so as we're listening to this, so we determine what our, so we have kind of the map of the actual performance. So we have to know what is in the actual performance before we can start making everything steady to a particular feel. So at this point, what we can do is we're going to select, again, as we saw before, selecting a single, selecting track, but I'm going to select all of the events, and we will again go to audio, to advanced, and say set definition from tempo. All right, and that's all done. So now as we do this, we can hear all the tracks. So if I wanted to play back at a perfect steady tempo, now it's playing back at 155 beats a minute. So let's say I wanted to be 140. So if we want to find kind of like where the downbeat is as well, so we can set. So we'll just kind of, so now we'll just say this is our 4/4, and then if you wanted to even just throw in, like let's say a groove agent instance, and I just wanted to add like virtual percussion to this. Just get this instrument loaded up here. But then all of your different MIDI tracks will kind of just automatically follow right along. Let's see if it's going to open up for me. Give it another couple seconds here. But that's really kind of, there we go. Okay, so now I'll load a kit with patterns. So I'll do it from the percussion agent. And we'll have this follow the transport. And let's say I wanted to follow the original. And I'll put these to halftime. So you know this is constantly fluctuating. We can now have the instrument automatically follow. Or if we wanted this to be a perfect steady tempo, like 144. So those are some different ways. So do a tempo detection and then do the apply. Go to, again, advanced under audio. So select the audio vents. Go to audio to advanced and set definition from tempo. All right, so I think I got this other one. Taking care of an email. All right. Okay, so we had a question. How can I import different songs into a single project so I can mix all those songs and have the same sound for all? All right, so let's say if I wanted to come over, let's say we'll do, let's just jump to different projects. So this is like how to merge different tracks together. So let's say, and there's some people do this where they'll have, instead of a different song for each project, they'll have a one project. I used to do this in the old days when we would we would sync the sequencer to analog tape, and I would have one sequence per reel of tape. So wherever they were, we didn't have to worry about any offsets or anything. So it's a pretty good way of working. So so let's say if I wanted to open a different project. So one of the things that we could do is, okay, I wanted to take, so let's just take tracks from this project. Okay, so, and we'll choose not to activate it. One clever thing to do is to actually literally just take tracks and drag them from one project into another. So that's, you know, this way your mixer could stay very similar. Another method would be to just go to import tracks from project. So let's come over here and say we'll do this. And if it's going to be like similar setups, we could say, let's select all. So we could say we want to import at the cursor position. We could choose all of the tracks. And then we also could see this select matching. So we could say, okay, this folder track's going to go into the track name folder. We could put this into a new track, but if the track names line up, you could import those and have multiple projects kind of all within one particular project. So, okay, so we covered that one already. Okay, so we have a question. I've been having trouble getting my external hardware channel strip in mono on my Focusrite Claret 8 Pre. I open audio connections, add external effects, route to output 5 from send bus 1 and return bus 1 to input 5. When I select the plugin from external plugins, it appears in the inserts, but no signal. I assume I'm setting it up right in Focusrite Control based on other tutorials. Any other ideas why this may be happening? So sometimes, depending on, you know, if some people on their audio interfaces sometimes will have better luck going in and out of different input ports. But one thing to check is if you go to the audio system here, see if disabling direct monitoring makes a difference. Because sometimes if you do direct monitoring, it's just going to pass the signal directly from the input to the output. So you may not, you know, then send the signal directly into the particular area. So try to you know, if it seems like everything is configured correctly, you could try doing like in of 5 and out of 6 to try changing that, but also just try to make sure that you have direct monitoring disabled. Otherwise, that may kind of bypass the signal in your Focusrite just to go straight from the input to the output without going through any of the software routing. All right, so we have a question. Can we change the time signature of the FX modulator to 3/4 or 6/8? Okay, so I think I created a quick kind of project maybe to show this. All right, so let's take a look at this. So I have a project, let's say the most unimaginative drum recording, let's say in 3/4. All right, so when we deal with the FX modulator, it really can either work in time or by musical divisions. So like now I could make this, and we can see kind of the speed of the modulations in the curves going across here. So if I was in 3/4 time, what I would probably do is just use a dotted half note. So as we play, so now as we would do like different modulation curves here, so let's say, and then, so let's say at this point, if I wanted to, we could double that. So now it's working on 3 beats. So just set the rhythmic value here to dotted half note or dotted quarter, and then you could work in different meters. So I'm not sure if you could do 7/8 effectively, but for like 4/4, 3/4, 6/8 shouldn't be a problem. So just set your time factor here to like a dotted value, and then you could have your modulation curve go in different meters if you want. All right, so let me jump back to our live questions and we'll see how everything's going. Thanks for people who sent questions in advance. Bear with me just a second. I switch back. And again, if you learn something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so we have the revelation today is tempo alignment with MIDI for Michael Pierce, and that I know someone that lives next to John Carpenter. So he's one of my Hollywood friends, lives in the Hollywood Hills, has the infinity pool and everything. So he did better in his career than I did. All right. All right, so I see I got saw an email from Gareth. I got the tune, so thank you for that. And okay, see lots of John Carpenter discussions. All right, wonderful to see Pablo on the live stream. Glad you could join us today. All right, that's why I'm supposed. It's my alarm to. My son should be getting off his bus now. All right. So we see from Sergo, Sergo. So I'm working with MIDI data in 16 channels of the Halligan plugin. MIDI data is recorded. I don't understand how to automate the arpeggio change patterns with already recorded MIDI data. So, you know, if you have MIDI data already, so let's go back. Let's just do a quick new project here so I don't do John Carpenter injustice here. All right, so let's go ahead and use that. So let's say I will quickly just generate some chord tracks. All right, so I'll just all right, so say we have our little progression here of music that's already has chords on it. So just Alt Option glue. So now we listen to it. And I'll take the loop off. All right, so let's say that's our beautiful chord. So let's say now if I want it to, let's say I'll just take, let's say I break down this section here and I wanted these chords to be, we'll give this a shot. So let's say I go to my Apache here and I have this set to 8th notes. Right, and on that part, I'm going to say freeze MIDI modifiers. Let's see if it's... And let's say this, I want it to be... Looks like it's going to do that for the entire track instead. So let's say if I come to this, let's see if we can, I was trying to see if we could do that on, all right, so if we could break it into separate parts, but let's say if we're here, so it should be. See if we glue these together. So I don't know of a way to kind of automatically automate that for, let's see if we can. I don't think that there's a way. It's going to be kind of one static value for this, and you could probably take it to different tracks and have different rhythmic values. But I'll play around with it and see if I could come up with maybe some kind of workaround of changing parameters, maybe with a generic remote or something, to see if that's controllable. Sorry about that. All right, so you see Michael Pierce has to take off, so thanks for joining us today. Reading through comments. See Michael, or we see Pablo just saying that the FX modulator is a great new plugin in Cubase. All right, so I see Gareth just says the 4 songs were sent to me and their final mix loudness. Sorry, no problem. So I hope you got the Caravan bass line from last night. So. All right, so we see United Plugins has a plugin called Orbitron that lets you blend 4 different modulation effects with a little ball that moves between the 4 different effects. Is there any way to imitate that in Cubase? So I wonder if we'll take a look at maybe the FX modulator. I'm not sure if that would allow you to blend between the 4 different effects, but you might be able to simulate something similar. So let's say if we come over here to our inserts and let's get to the FX modulator. All right, so let's say we have volume, filter, let's do pan. All right, so let's see if we. So you might be able to, like through generic remote, or let's see if we come to like a quick control learn. So if we set like the mix level, let's see if that is a different slot. So it's not a single control, but it looks like you could come over here. So let's say if we want to mix, let's say a volume. So let's see if we come. So there might be a way to kind of do it through a remote functionality here. Or you could have this kind of go into groups and then send if you wanted to even do like a surround panner, but it might not be the same type of functionality. All right, so I just see from Swan J Music, I need a Cubase Pro to help me fix a major crash that happened 2 weeks ago. Okay, if you could give us maybe more information on what happened with the crash. I just see Greg, Cubase is not supporting me on this crash. So if you could, if you have any more information other than the program crash, I mean, it's kind of, if there's something you were doing before, if it's not opening, if it's not, just if you have more information that's helpful other than it just crashed, because it doesn't give it a lot of information. Okay. Now you just see, like, also if you have like different effects, I think like when we're doing this question, it could be something similar to how you can do kind of an XY axis with inside of like Hallian. So we'll just show this as Jazz Dude mentioned. So you could have a little ball here. So I don't know of anything like that for FX modulator, but you could probably, if it's within an instrument, you could have your different modulation sources set up to use something like that. So you just see Swan J Music. So if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I might be able to, get you in touch with support, or if you have more information that you want to share other than you had a major crash, that, be happy to kind of try to get it figured out for you. All right, so we'll see if we have any more questions. I think I'm at the end of all the questions. Just wait a couple minutes. We'll see if there's additional questions. And once again, we'll see our, on Friday, we'll have these Zoom meetup on Friday. So we'll start that at about 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. So it'll be kind of an abbreviated live stream on Friday. So about half our normal time. And then we will be able to, and then starting at about 3 p.m., we'll just have kind of a Zoom meetup. And if you haven't participated in one, I think it's a wonderful way to get to know and meet other people that attend the live streams. So that information is I think it's always fascinating discussions and conversations that go on. So we'll see if there's any other questions that come in. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. All right, so we see Benny's going to be on the live stream or the Zoom meetup on Friday. And there was usually a little bit of a delay from when I talk to when everyone hears, so I'll just wait just a little bit, see if there's any other questions. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. Okay, so with that, I guess we got through all the questions today. I look forward to seeing a bunch of people on Friday, and we hope that everyone stays safe and healthy. And we'll see everyone on Friday, and look forward to seeing many new faces on the Zoom meetup. Take care.